Back once again. We're now live. We're about 5 minutes late. It's 6 past 10 o'clock. We're about 5 minutes, well, 6 minutes off the mark. Hopefully, we'll do better today than we did yesterday. I'm still trying to work out some of the issues. Let's see here. I'm going to try Brighton rather than enhance and see if that actually makes a difference. For some reason, when it comes out here like this, you can actually the picture that you see on the screen on the monitor is not exactly what you get on the encoded video. What you see on the encoded video, more often than not, is darkened and degraded. So I decided, okay, let's do this. Let's brighten the video. Let's go with Brighton. It doesn't give you a lot of controls to brighten things, but you know, that's kind of the way things go. Let's see, control room here. We have our audio. We have camera. The option to turn the camera on and off. Adjusting my audio level. Let's see here. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, so we're just we're playing around with the controls a little bit here. We're still in our testing phase. We're gonna be in our testing phase pretty much until about July 15th. From there, we end up going on a research. I'm going on a research expedition, so I'll be out of the office quite a bit. Let's see here. Let me bring up my calendar. Yeah, from just about the 15th on. That's gonna be. I think probably what will end up happening is that the 11th, July 11th, will be the last broadcast in July. And we're not going to be back again until Monday, August 10th. So that will sort of end. August 10th will start once again. Actually, no, it's August 10th. Maybe August 10th or 11th. We'll start again, and we'll bring our things live again. And it probably won't be on test anymore. We'll probably have a good idea of where we're going to go. And we'll do things on a more regular basis. So right now, we're still in the test mode. We're still trying to test things out, adjust things. The reason why I'm here and I'm not back in the original office where I was prior to this, that the laptop in that room is being adjusted so that I can go live 24/7. I'm going to be trying out when I get back. We will be having a CyborgAlphaTV live. That's going to be live 24/7. It's going to be a 24/7 live streaming channel. So it gives you an open IPTV option. In other words, you don't have to go behind a subscription. You don't have to pay for anything. This is on the air, open and free. So that's kind of where we're going. And we were supposed to start doing this in October, so that we can start going live with Physics TV. But things have worked out that I've been able to sort of push things ahead, you know, sort of escalate things. And we're beginning now. We're beginning in July rather than in August. So rather than October. So, anyways, that sort of brings you up to date with what's going on. We're going to be here at 10 o'clock. We'll be here from 10 to 11. Actually, we'll do it like because we were like 5 minutes late. We'll be a little bit later than that. We'll be 11:02. Then we're going to move to You Now, and then from You Now we go to Twitcasting. And I invite you to join me along there to hang out, to talk, to chit chat. And tonight we're talking government and conspiracy still. This is our extended night on this. I was initially looking at, because we are going to talk about UFOs, we're going to talk about aliens, we're going to talk about the we called black budget programs. These are these top secret programs at Area 51. They actually are an extension of the Nazi science program, and so we can trace these black budget programs all the way back into Nazi Germany. Excuse me. One thing they realized is that I could test this out by watching this on one of my screens, but I'll do that later on. I think I'll do another test later on tonight, probably around 3 o'clock in the morning, to see whether or not a live broadcast, what it actually looks like in real time and what it looks like once the video is actually done. So, let's see, where do we go now? Now, you may ask yourself, what do UFOs, aliens, and black budget programs have to do with governments and conspiracy? And it has a lot to do with governments and conspiracy. And what you'll find out is that there's a lot of once you start taking a look outside the box and really start questioning what you're being told is true, and this is sort of happening to a lot of Americans, realizing that the government is lying to them, and a lot of the stuff you find in your textbooks is just completely off. And this is, you know, this is happening once again, not only to older people, but it's happening to younger people, though, particularly on YouTube. As you've got these famous YouTubers coming up and touting called standard lines. In other words, they're toting the government line. They're not challenging what's being said. They're not challenging the narrative of what's being said in the public media. And not about, more about the mainstream media, not necessarily the public media, but the mainstream media. And this is true for us. You know what? I really don't like to disparage people, and to sort of, you know, speak badly of them in terms. But in many cases, you have to. Sometimes you have to, you know, be able to level criticism. A while ago, I became part of the Nerd Fighter group. These are the people who put on VidCon. They're very popular now, very popular, and it's almost impossible to challenge anything they say. Anything they say is more or less gospel. Anything they say is more or less gold. And, well, that's just kind of the way things go. And the thing is that I'm not much of a fanboy. I don't fanboy. I don't fangirl, if you want, or whatever you want to call it. Well, not those days. It's not as a matter of age or I'm out of that phase. It's an issue primarily that I don't. I've moved so far outside of the box, outside of the standard mainstream view, that the things that these people do don't impress me anymore. I'm not impressed to the point where, oh my God, it's, you know, put your name in here. I don't do that anymore. It's simply not for me. But you know, I'm not going to knock somebody else for doing that. I'm not going to knock somebody else for doing that. That's, you know, that's kind of the way they are. You know. They adjust to things like that. You know, that's their preferences, and you know, sometimes you don't knock people for the preferences, even though you may not agree with, or you may even strongly disagree with their preference. But you know, that's their preference, and you know what? You know, you can't make someone feel bad for their preferences necessarily, and you know, unless it's something that's really bad for them, you know, that's going to end up hurting them in the long run, then you don't knock them for it, but you just, you know, if you want to say something politely, or you know, like that. But in this case here, what's happening is that, and I saw this out with the signs, and they did this before with a lot of the things, in, you know, with the political issues too, is that John Green, and I think it's Hank Green too, will come up and they'll put up these looks at issues, and and it's aimed at kids, at teens. So they're explaining the Ukrainian issue, and it's such a whitewash. It's such, you know, they think that, oh, we're being balanced, and it's not being. They've missed out so much. The thing is, wherever my mind go. It's hard to think of the words here. You can't do... I mean, they're trying to do things in 5 minutes. They're trying to explain these complex situations in 5 minutes. You can't do that. You can't explain things that are very complex in 5 minutes. It's simply not possible. And yeah, that's what they're trying to do. In 5 minutes, they're trying to, you know, in this video, top 7 minutes, they're trying to explain what's going on in Ukraine. They're trying to explain what's going on in Syria. They try to explain, you know, a little bit about Iraq. And they have all these different videos upon these sort of world events. But the thing is, do they realize that they're not fooling anybody? Well, they may be fooling a lot of people, you know, but people who really know. Let me just adjust this for a second. Yeah, that's better. I needed to adjust them. Right now, I'm doing this from, using a webcam. It doesn't seem that on Linux, anyways, that that the software that the software that Hangout uses recognizes anything on Linux. It doesn't seem to be like for all the you know, the more advanced controls and everything like that. They're all on Windows. They're all Windows type of encoders. And so there's nothing really for Google Hangouts that allows you to encode, do an alternate encoding, other than the Google Hangouts option. There's no way of going into external encoders and doing it this way. But this, you know what, we'll do a workaround. We'll work around these particular issues. But that being said, well, you know, we'll go back to the whole issue on Hank Green here, and you can't do things shortly and really do a proper job. I mean, do they understand that ISIS is not ISIS? It's the American-funded ISIS. If you've been listening and watching the news, following the news at all, listening to John McCain on the news talking about how we need to fund the Syrian rebels, the free Syrian army. Well, ISIS is a free Syrian army. And the thing is, you could have seen this, except the people on the news chose to edit this out. I mean, you wonder where they got all their information from, where everything was, you know, where they got everything from. And if you did your journalistic work, you did your research, you'll find out that all this stuff, all the footage they had, was coming from an Islamic website. And in fact, they were coming from a lot of Islamic sites inside Syria. And the thing is that Assad had not shut down these websites. Who shut the websites down that you couldn't see them in the United States? Well, the U.S. did. The U.S. had blocked the IP. They were on the FBI terrorist watch list. And they shut these IPs down because they were supporting terrorism. And yet, here you have McCain on the news every night saying, we need to support these free Syrian rebels. They're not Al-Qaeda. Well, yeah, they are. They were Al-Qaeda, but now they're actually worse than Al-Qaeda. They actually have a lot of funding. They've broken away from Al-Qaeda, and now Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Iraq are now fighting with each other. They're fighting for control. ISIS is blowing up mosques. It's destroying a lot of the museums in Iraq, in northern Iraq. And the thing is, this is talking particularly about the buildings, what the Americans call collateral damage, the human casualties, which are insignificant to the United States, and this is apparent because of the way they fund Israel and its operations. Human beings, unless you're with what they call a visible minority, don't really matter. In other words, you know, unless you're with what the Democratic left call a visible minority, and this is this is the way socialism is. They come up with these terms of rhetoric, these terms that really sort of fudge around things. They're not really how should I put this? They're not really nice. And what they'll do is they'll change the definition so that something that is wrong is now all of a sudden something that's good. Something is good, they redefine it so that now now that it's bad. And they really twist things around. And they've done this in Israel, and so you have to go out. Sorry about that. I had the hiccups for a bit. You have to go outside of the United States to really get the news. You can't get the news in American media. Most American media has been shut down. It's been whitewashed. There's not really much there other than channels are now news channels like MSNBC, Fox, CNN, ABC, NBC. Well, all those channels are nothing more than rhetoric mouthpieces for a variety of different mainstream political groups. They're not really there to bring journalism to you. I mean, they're not journalists. They're PR people. Right now, news is more about PR. It's more about rhetoric than anything else. Let's see. It's 22 past now. Yeah, it's and the thing is, this is unfortunate because, and this is why this is sort of giving you we're preparing a background. If you think this is simply a tangent, when it might be simply a tangent, but in many cases, tangents can be good backgrounds for the conversation to come ahead. And when you're doing work like this, when you're doing these sort of research work, when you're going beyond what the standard understanding is, you do have to have background. You do have to provide a context for where you're going. And this will sort of provide the background for later on when we talk about UFOs and conspiracies within the UFO situation. And you can see that that this will form nicely as a background, as a context for the UFO discussion. So there's a video popping around now on the internet that's not really getting on too much onto American TV too much. It's just barely bubbling over the surface, but you'll see it on certain websites. It says U.S. profoundly troubled by brutal beating of his Palestinian teen who turned out to be an American. In other words, Palestinian went back to the West Bank to visit his home with I think his father or something like that, and wound up getting beaten up and arrested by the police. And this is pretty typical of what happens in the West Bank. This is pretty standard. You wouldn't be surprised by that at all if you follow what's going on in the West Bank. That a teen gets arrested and beaten up by the Israeli police. This is nothing. Isn't anything new. What's happening is the United States is just now finding out about it because it's happening to an American. The question is now, is he really an American? In other words, this is where the Democrats and Obama will see whether or not they stand up or not and say, this is an American, or will they back down and sort of fumble around with it? Because right now, they've come out with rhetoric. They haven't really done anything to deal with the situation. Once the U.S. the State Department issued a letter of complaint, there was something along those lines. The judge in the case decided to extend the incarceration of in other words, this teen who he's injured, he's seriously injured. They won't take him to the hospital. They won't have a doctor see him. They won't let him to get medical attention because he's in an Israeli jail. Decided instead of releasing the person and letting him go to the hospital, extended the detention for further investigation. That's the line that's on the in there. We're extending the detention for further investigation. Well, hopefully he dies in there and the question will go away, right? and the thing is the battery Israelis, right? But if you flip through the American flip through the news channels again, through the different news sources on the internet, next one that pops up, California CHP patrol officer photographed and filmed viciously beating a woman, punching and kicking a woman on the highway as she was walking on the highway. She's walking on the edge of the highway. The CHP stopped and started beating her up. I don't know what ended up happening, but you know. And the thing is, you see that you see this police brutality all across the United States, within on the internet. It doesn't really get reported much in the news, but I guess probably because it's happening so much that the news. Well, this isn't really news. This is the police beating somebody up. This is something that's normal, of course, now because with the Patriot Act and everything like that, you can't question the authorities. You can't question the police. These actions are all done for our protections, right? Well, if we weren't doing what we're doing, if we didn't randomly beat people up, you wouldn't be protected. That's how you protect people. You go around randomly beating people up. This is how Daffy Duck solves crimes, right? Daffy Duck goes. He's in his Sherlock Holmes character. And he goes into a place where a crime has been committed, and he proceeds to walk around and slap everybody and accuse them of committing the crime until Porky Pig, who's the assistant Watson, actually solves the crime. And if you think this is hilarious, and that's an extreme case here. This is not how things really go. Well, I have bad news for you. Those reality TV shows? Well, the reality, cops are like that too. The cop shows that are the sort of real reality cop shows are like that. But the thing is, you also have the shows like CSI. There's a whole bunch of them now. Law and Order. They do the exact same thing, right? They go from suspect to suspect to suspect. And they go about these imaginary scenarios on how the crime was committed, and they show all this graphic blah 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 blah, and they turn out to be wrong, and just basically 15 minutes before the end of the show, before the hour is up, they solve the crime and find who really did it. And this is the standard formula for most TV shows. And the thing is that when you see, this is your standard entertainment today. This is the standard formulaic for these adult, mature TV shows. And of course, they make it more adult because they have some sex scenes in there. They throw some nudity in there, and stuff like that. Stuff that in order to know that you're an adult, if you're not watching naked people on TV, you're not an adult. You're a kid, right? That's how you know. That's how you know you're mature. You're a mature adult. If you're watching naked people on TV, then you're an adult. Otherwise, you're not. And this is typically standard. This is what passes for standard. Well, there goes my thing. I can't do anything about it now because that's my ringtone. I should have silenced that before, but I didn't. So what happens? You take the Israeli report. If you only saw the Israeli report, you would say, "Oh, there go the Israelis again." You would think that the issue is isolated to the Israeli side only. Come to the United States and read these other reports, you see that what's happening in Israel to the Palestinian teen is pretty much standard. It's now status quo. And then when you go and look at and see what's going on with ISIS and you follow the information there, you'll find, again, government cover-up. Go and look at what's going on in Ukraine. Is the government telling you the truth of what's going on in Ukraine? Which is basically ethnic cleansing, the coup appointed president. I can't remember what his name is now actively bombing villages, unarmed civilians, and you see the planes. There's no questions about it. Even Ron Paul, the Ron Paul Institute, and Ron Paul himself has come up and said, I think this is one place you can turn to is Ron Paul, and sort of see what's kind of going on. If you're not a Ron Paul fan, go check out what Ron Paul has to say. Look at the information he's putting across, and then go try to find other sources outside of the United States, and you'll find that what Ron Paul is saying is true, that we're the ones who are starting most of these problems. And the thing is that you go back to Hank, let's go back to the original thing about Hank Green. Hank Green misses all of it. None of this stuff is in Hank Green's report. None of this content is in there. So what's he doing? Even though he's tacitly trying to give both sides of the equation, he's not. Because he's leaving out a large chunk of the information. And much of Hank Green's and John Green's stuff is like that. They're the vlog brothers. But the thing is that they're worshipped in this manner. They are, and I'm not going to shy away. They are being worshipped. They have this cult status that they can say and do anything, and it's all okay. But it's not all okay. It's not hunky dory and whatever. There are some serious issues, and you can't deal with these issues in 5 or even 10 minutes. These things have to go on. There is an in-depth behind this. And the question is that you would assume that at least some teenagers would have some of the depth to understand this. And yet, the large chunk of the environment that's around them is sort of saying, oh, well, teens, they're shallow people. It's mostly about themselves. They are really narcissists and stuff like that. Let's not bother them with the details. Oh, really? So, okay, so teens, let me ask you this: if you're a teen, if you're a teen, I don't think you're watching this. But why would you be watching this if you're a teen? Let's be real about this. If you're a teen, ask yourself: are you really shallow? Are you really that shallow that you can't spend more than 5-10 minutes looking into a particular issue? Is this it? Are you all about comics and pamphlet-sized magazines? And this is even true. I think that I would have more of an argument with girls than I do with boys, because boys, yeah, they're playing video games all the time, or they're watching sports. But the girls, they watch these things like Oprah, and they get into these. You have to talk about your feelings. You have to get into these discussions about things. You have to think about things. You have to get into spirituality. Okay, well, how far into spirituality have you gotten into? Is it candles and yoga mats and that's it? Or are you going further and trying to understand where this stuff comes from? Are you going into what's going on in the environment in terms of racism and anti-bullying? Are you actually looking at the root causes of the stuff? Or are you simply going around repeating slogans that you've been taught by some higher up, someone that you worship on a stage? They're in a microphone saying, "Stop bullying now! We be equal. Everyone needs to be equal. Everyone needs to have their rights. Everyone needs to be heard. Everyone needs their time in the spotlight." Right? So this narcissistic view of the world that as long as everybody is narcissistic, everything's going to be fine, and yet it's not. I mean, is this the in-depth? Is that as far as you go to be in-depth? And the thing is, I understand, because I was once there myself, going through these questions, particularly once you start questioning what's going on in society, you try to be alternative, and I started trying to be alternative at 15 years old, but in many cases, even at 15, as independent as you think you are, you're still being led around. You really haven't seen enough to start questioning what's going on. But I think it's not that you can't do this. It's not something you can't. It's just you haven't at this point in time. It's something that hasn't been done. And so the thing is that girls who consider themselves to be more intellectual, they consider themselves to be more educated than guys are, and they are actually doing better in school than guys. They tend to do more reading than guys. So in other words, their tendencies are there. Its question is the follow through there? Are they living up to the attitude that they have? And more often than not, they're not. They're not living up to the attitude. They're not living up to what they are supposed to be doing. And what we not supposed, what they could be doing. In other words, their capacity. Their capacity is one thing. The things they can do is one thing, and what they are actually doing, the reality, right, is nowhere near what their rhetoric is, or what their capacity is. Rhetoric is something you say, and it's usually extrapolated or exaggerated. In many cases, even false. Your capacity is something that the limits as far as you can go. What is your capacity? What your capacity to do something? That's something different. So, in comparison to do these two things, the reality of what's actually going on, are they near their capacity, near their rhetoric, or are they very far away? And right now, the reality is they're very far away from them. They're not close to what the rhetoric is. A lot of times what's happening is that even though they think they're doing a lot of different things, they're being fed information that is really being recycled. It's not new information. It's not different. It's just recycled and repackaged. So there is imagine if someone gave you a gift, you had a good time with it, you threw it out. Someone picked that gift out of the garbage, rewrapped it, and, well, actually, before rewrapping it, they sort of rearranged the gift a little bit so it looks a little different, but it's the same gift, fundamentally. They just simply rearranged it, rewrapped it in new paper, and gave it to you again. Do you think you've gotten a new gift? Well, you can, on the surface, it seems like you've gotten a new gift, but if it's the same old thing out of the garbage, then it's the same old thing. And that's kind of what's happening now. There's a lot of the information that's being fed to teens, particularly to teen girls, even though they think they're on the outside, that they're getting something new, they're getting something fresh, they're receiving alternative views. They're not. They're receiving repackaged information. It's the same mainstream information, but it's simply repackaged to look alternative. And I think this is one of the fundamental things that sort of bothers me about Linkin Park and about a lot of these other groups coming up, is that they are a repackaging of things that were there before. So then Linkin Park really isn't anything new. They're simply a repackaging of what was before. And if you're aware of this, then your view of Linkin Park is like, eh. You can only at best you can be lukewarm about Linkin Park because there's really nothing new there. You realize they're repackaged, and that's about it. And this is sort of the same thing about Hank Green and John Green. You go on, you see all the people screaming. You want to see what all the fuss is about. You go in there, and they're making being a nerd hip and cool. There's a lot of fluff behind being a nerd. So now they have nerd fighters, and there's a lot of nerd movies out there now. Oh yeah, it's all right to be a nerd. It's okay to be a nerd. And then you want to go look and say, okay, let's see where the substance is. What are they saying beyond, hey, it's cool to be a nerd? Don't forget to be awesome. Is there anything more to this? Is there anything beyond don't forget to be awesome? And when you look at it, when you look to see, well, okay, what's the actual content? What's the meat here? There's nothing there. Hank Green and John Green, the Vlog brothers, are all PR. It's the same old crap. The feel-good crap. Oh, don't worry, feel good about yourself, and you'll be all right. It's the same feel-good crap that has been done over and over and over again. It's just repackaged in a different way. It's a repackaging of the same stuff. There's nothing new. And the thing is, there can be things that are new. There can be news. There is a lot more information out there than simply repackaging things. They simply haven't done the work. They haven't done the research. But of course, they're enjoying their fame. They're enjoying having VidCon. VidCon is the their annual pilgrimage to worship John Green. To visit their Lord. You want to visit the Lord John Green and Hank Green. You want to visit them in their splendor, see them in their splendor. You go see them at VidCon, right? That's their Mecca. That's their Jerusalem, and that's how they go see and worship their God. Other people are like, but I'm a Christian. I don't. Well, unfortunately, if you're following a large chunk of this VidCon crowd, it's the same trappings as a religion. Religion isn't simply. A lot of people don't understand that religion is the way you practice what you believe. So you have a belief, you start practicing that belief, you start practicing in a ritualized fashion that belief, and that becomes your religion. So you believe in John Green, you believe in Hank Green, you believe in the Vlog Brothers, you idolize them, they're your idols, and so you go to VidCon on a regular basis, or you watch their videos on a regular basis. You go to their book signings and stuff like that, and all of a sudden now, this fangirling stuff isn't necessarily fangirling, but now you can define it as religion. This is the same thing about science. Science it isn't fact. There's not a lot of fact. That's why research is there. Research and science go hand in hand. All you have to do is look at quantum physics and quantum mechanics. Quantum physics, quantum mechanics, superstring theory. They tell you that most of the universe, 95% of the universe, is missing and unaccounted for. In other words, our total sum knowledge of the universe, if we actually accounted for everything we see, right, everything we can measure, that amounts to 5%. So 95% is unknown. So how can you say, how can you even state as an atheist, right? There is no God. I know there is no God because I know from the 5% that we can see that there is no God. Yeah, you can state with absolute certainty. We're going to define absolute certainty as a 5% certainty, and using that 5% certainty as an absolute, we're going to say there's no God. Even though superstring theory does now talk about parallel universes, which could include a spiritual universe, even though our Higgs boson experiment caused a lot of issues with our finite theories, and really pointed back towards the uncertainty, the unknowledge of our universe. In order to understand the Higgs boson, in order to deal with the Higgs boson, we had to deal in abstracts. We had to sort of fudge our numbers a little bit to really get there. Once we found the Higgs boson, and that's what they did when they found the Higgs boson. They quickly got out their eraser and erased part of the equations. We did the equation. We found the Higgs boson. Look, we calculated the Higgs boson. And they didn't calculate the Higgs boson. They found the particle and then refudged the numbers so that the equations matched what they found. And how can you say that? Don't you know these people don't lie? They're saints. They're apostles. They're truth. Science is truth. Well, how do I know this? Because I watched the colloquium. I watched the research reports. They go into a lot of the calculus in it. They go into a lot of the physics, the quantum field theory, and they explain how all these things sort of fit in. So they go from the theory to the actual what they see in the particle, and the theory doesn't meet what they see in the particle, but it somewhat meets it. So they go in and they fudge the numbers. They go and readjust the way they see things from the quantum field theory, so that now the quantum field theory fits the Higgs boson. Well, the problem is that you've now got a gaping hole in your understanding of quantum field theory, because now that you've found the Higgs boson and you realize it doesn't fit the quantum field theory, and it also doesn't fit the understanding in string theory, you've got a massive problem now. You really have a massive problem, because now all of a sudden you've got these massive holes, even if the public is not aware of it. As a researcher, you're aware of it, that there's these massive holes in these theories. And that means these holes are these are things that you don't understand. These are things that you don't know. And my perspective is this is the 95% you don't know. This is dark matter. This is dark energy. Is this it? Dark matter and dark energy form 95% of the universe? Well, yeah. Of course, your particles aren't going to match up with your theories. And the theories there are simply to give you ideas. And this is sort of what happens when you look at what's going on. You go into UFO research, and you go into do this research on aliens and so on and so forth. You actually have to go into the government archives. You have to go into what the government has said, their government reports, and so on and so forth. And of course, most of the stuff, because you aren't dealing with particle physics, you're dealing with, essentially with nuclear physics, it's all going to be classified. It's all going to be classified stuff because it can be used to manufacture weapons. I mean, this is the whole issue in Iran now, right? Iran says, "Oh, we're building our nuclear reactors for peaceful purposes, for science, and so on and so forth." And the United States and Israel says, "Oh no, you're not. You're building it for weapon purposes. You're going to make an atomic bomb." Well, the thing is that yeah, you can use it, and this is where both sides are right. You can use the reactors and the reactors they're building for science, for scientific purposes that are benign and not harmful. But at the same time, you can also use the same reactors while you're doing this research that is benign and not harmful. You can use that same research to create weapons. You know, this is what they talk about, you dual use. And so and you go and find out where are all the UFO sightings. And if you're aware of your science, you're aware of your physics, particularly in quantum physics, you become aware of where all these testing sites are, where all the missile testing sites are, where all the weapons testing sites are, where all the various different military bases are. Because astronomy, physics, and most of the science, particularly if you're doing the upper levels, you're thinking about getting funding. Most of your funding comes from DARPA, and this is a department of the Army. It is funded by, in many cases, the Department of Defense. In other words, most of the funding in science and research comes from the military, comes within the military budget. You know that there are, because you have friends in this, you see people who talk about this, who are in the community, who do this research, that they talk about these sort of black access programs, the black budget programs. These are programs and budgets that are not on the books. They're hidden from the average person, and they basically have, in many ways, carte blanche to do what they want to do until there's enough outside ruckus around them. In other words, they're causing enough problems that they're forced to move to other places or shut down. And the thing is if they have enough military power, they're large enough, they have large enough military power, like most military bases do. The way you deal with the large raucous crowds around you is you simply confiscate land for under the guise of national security or national security interests. This is a national security interest. This is for your own protection. We need to confiscate this land so that you can't see what's going on over there. And that, in some cases, resolves most of the ruckus outside, and things move off to the internet and to various different cafes where people mumble and grumble about what's going on behind hidden walls. And that forms the UFO and the alien conspiracies. But if you follow the sort of the research line, you realize that all of the UFO sightings are around military bases. This kind of raises an eyebrow and sort of say, well, if all these UFO sightings are around military bases, these UFO sightings must have something to do with the military bases themselves. And if you're aware of the research and the black programs, then you go, well, is it possible they're doing something in the black programs? And as more often than not, they are likely doing something within the black programs. So the question is now, do they have access to aliens? Well, is there UFO, extraterrestrial beings, extraterrestrial cast of their so-called reverse engineering? Well, you have to again go into the history books again. You have to go into your historical research of how these bases formed, what different types of projects are out there, and you'll find things like MK Ultra. These in this case, you have to follow the line of Black Ops, the development of Black Ops and PSYOPs. This is the CIA development of and testing of various different ways of creating mass confusion, mass hallucinations, and they were actually experimenting with it. They actually sprayed crowds of people with LSD. They aerosolized LSD and sprayed it in the air. Much of what happened in the United States in the 1960s and 70s, the drug addiction to LSD and in the so-called psychedelic era, that was actually a DOD experiment. Timothy Leary was getting his funding from the Department of Defense. This was a military exercise. It was a military experiment. Later on, they found access that this program was not alone, and you find this program with Timothy Leary in the 60s, not by looking at Timothy Leary himself, but actually looking at an earlier program in the 1950s called MK Ultra, and you have to go to Montauk, Long Island there to find this. And when you take a look at this, you realize that the United States has had a long history, and this, you can sort of, as you do the search on, you'll find the history of the Tuskegee Airmen. This is in World War II. The United States military has had a long history of experimenting on its own people, and with a variety of different projects. And they have a long history of lying to the people. There's the natural reaction to the knee-jerk reaction of any government official, any government body in the United States, is to immediately lie and cover up, and they'll come out and eventually restate things. This is what if we see Hillary Clinton do. Hillary Clinton, Obama, they always come out and restate, and they tell you what they really meant. Well, if you have someone comes out and tell you what they really meant, in many cases they were lying to you before, and they're now trying to recreate the truth. But again, they're not going to come out and tell you the truth, so they have to come out and recreate the truth. And so what happens is that all of a sudden your alien experimentation, the evidence for the alien experimentation, you ask yourself, well, where is this alien experimentation? It's in the same regions that you have military bases in. It's where the military bases are. And you go, well, is it the military or is it aliens? Well, more likely than not, because the UFO is connected to the military, it's more likely or not that the experimentation on human beings that we see, the abductions, they would use an LSD mist. They would mist LSD in the clouds, so the person goes into deep hallucinations. Of course, from the person's perspective, they are being taken up into a helicopter. They're being taken up into a spaceship. That's the hallucination. While they're really being dealt with by black ops. They're being experimented on by black ops and black programs. And so what happens when you put all the information together, you now have to say, well, maybe there's not that. Maybe there is an alien contact. Maybe again, this is once again our government, doing devious things to us. Happy 4th of July. But as I said before, because it is Happy 4th of July, I am American patriot because I don't believe in a social America. Americanism and the American ideal is individuality. It's individualism. It's the individual person. It's your own pursuit of freedom. And it's not about the collective. It's not about social conservatism. It's not about a large chunk of what the United States now stands for. It's about individual choice. It's about individual freedom. And even to the point where, let's say, someone says something you strongly disagree with, or has a strong opinion that you disagree with, you defend the person's right to have that opinion and to express it. Where it stops, where this sort of freedom stops, is that you can't allow a person to murder you. You can't, you don't want people you don't want people murdering people. You don't want people raping people. You don't want people robbing other people. In other words, there are fundamentals that turn freedom into complete anarchy if they're not dealt with. In other words, you want freedom, you want individual freedom, but you don't want anarchy. And there's sort of a fine border there. And this sort of came up actually in Toronto. That's where the immigrant community came in, and rather than being forced to become Canadian, rather than having a melting pot like the United States has, every immigrant was allowed to stay an immigrant. They were able to stay within their own fundamentally brought their village with them, and they lived in these transplanted villages. And so Toronto has become very unique because you can drive all over Toronto and fundamentally drive all over the world, because you go from neighborhood to neighborhood that has these different ethnic backgrounds. And because they haven't changed, they haven't Canadianized, they haven't Americanized, they are fundamentally what they were free to remain. They were free to remain fundamentally what they were. You see that flavor there. You see that flavor there. It's not lost. They haven't lost their culture. Where if you go to the United States, a lot of the culture is lost because they're forced to Americanize, and that American culture is now sort of permeates their being, it permeates their existence, and they are no longer, let's say, African, because this is the issue about African Americans here. We've talked about that, issues of African. They're no longer African, but they're now American, and they have an African ethnic background. So that's actually the proper term. It's not African. African American is not the proper term. It's American African, because it's the American first and it's the African second. And this sort of typifies, again, the United States is no longer following its initial ideals. And you can see that in Hank Green. Even the left is doing the same thing. They're promoting ideals that are not necessarily American. They're viewed as American, but they're not necessarily American. And it's a blind faith in the country that my country is always right, and that's not always the case. You do have to go outside. You do have to question. You do have to sort of challenge the status quo, if you will. So, anyways, it's about 11 o'clock. No one seems to have popped up at all. There's no viewers. But anyways, this is going to be recorded. You can watch this on video on demand. I think we'll do better later on as it gets more advertised. Anyways, that's it for tonight. I will see you Monday night. I'm going to skip Sunday night. Monday night we'll come back and do this all over again.